Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. What's up? How's tournament going for y'all out there?
It's going.
Yeah, I'm not even bothering with my bracket anymore.
Oh, you're done.
I had Kentucky in the Final Four.
Sucker.
Yeah, sucker. No kidding. Let me give you the scores here real quick of what's going on out there. Northwestern was a winner today in overtime, 8-9 matchup. They're a 9 seed. They beat Florida Atlantic, who was a darling a year ago, 77-65. Baylor, easy winner over Colgate in a 3-14 matchup, 92-67. The other games that are in action right now, we got an upset brewing, halftime. 15 seed Western Kentucky leads the 2 seed Marquette 43-36.
Oh, no.
That's a big old no. I'll call this now. Marquette runs away from them at the second half. But we'll see. I guess we'll see. And in a 5-12 matchup, San Diego State, the higher seed, leads UAB 35-29. That is also at half. And that's it, right, for what's out there. UConn should start soon. They got a little bit delayed because the Northwestern game went long and went into overtime. I'll start there. Let me just talk about the early games very quickly about Baylor and Colgate. So I'm a season ticket holder of the Patriot League. I go to all the AU games, which means I saw Colgate in person and then watched AU beat Colgate a few weeks ago as the season was coming down the stretch, which gave me a little bit of hope because they are the class of our league that AU, when they get into their tournament, would have a shot to get the automatic bid by winning it. They didn't, but it gave me a little bit of hope. Colgate is a classic, really well-run program. Good players at that level, the mid-tier players, very well coached. Like all the Tony Bennett haters, system. They'll hate them.
Right.
System team, but they're very, very good at that system. They've been a stalwart in this league. They've won it a number of times, and they're totally unathletic. So they can't get a draw like Baylor.
Right.
They needed someone who's either young and inexperienced, like what Oakland got last night with Kentucky. They'd probably still lose to Kentucky, but like someone who doesn't execute that well or is a little young and inexperienced, or they need the not overly athletic but good power team to have a shot at like hanging around with them. The second they drew Baylor, I went, that's a chalk. Like they've got no chance to hang with a team like that. There will be spurts in the game where Baylor, outscores them 14-2 in a minute 10, and then it's over. Right. So that one didn't surprise me. Northwestern, Florida Atlantic was a classic 8-9 matchup. Neither team is particularly great. I've seen a lot of Northwestern this year because of Maryland. I watched them play them. And a couple things happened. Northwestern, who's good, well-coached, good executing team, not overly athletic, same thing. I thought Florida Atlantic actually was a more athletic team out there. But this is a well-coached team, Chris Collins, very well-coached team. They built a lead, had a lead, and then for some reason, for the last 3 minutes, decided Boo Booey was LeBron James.
Right.
And decided, they're going to give him the ball and isolate and just let him go one-on-one, and he missed 5 shots in a row. They decided he has to be their closer, and they just stopped running the offense that was working for them and let Florida Atlantic get back into the game. And then they got lucky. They ended up tying it because Florida Atlantic missed the front end of a 1-and-1 with 20 seconds left, and Northwestern went down, scored. And then inexplicably, go watch the end of this. Northwestern scores to tie it. Florida Atlantic has a timeout, has 7 seconds on the clock, brings the ball up court. The point guard stops about 8 feet behind the three-point line with 3 seconds on the clock, and then realizes he has to chuck something up, and it gets blocked or whatever. They go to overtime, and Northwestern runs away from him. It was pathetic execution. He didn't even get a decent look at the potential game winner.
It also set the tone for overtime because then Northwestern just killed them. They scored 19 points in overtime and just ends up blowing them out anyways. Yeah,
they had 19 in the first half, 19 in overtime.
Yeah.
So Northwestern moves on, and they're going to get probably UConn next, but we'll see. UConn's got their 116 matchup coming up here. That'll start any minute now. And the other 2 games, again, halftime in one of them. Halftime in both, actually. The UAB San Diego State game just tipped in the second half. San Diego State leads by 6 and could be major upset. If Western Kentucky knocks off Marquette, that's a major, major upset. Let's get to the other major, major upset that occurred. Calipari, everyone's screaming at him today. And there's a little bit of the Tony Bennett thing, which I'll get into, which is you can't do it this way anymore is one of the arguments. It's a different type of argument. It's we're out of the one and done era thing where you can just get high caliber players and these 5-star recruits, put them out there knowing they're only going to be there for a year, maybe 2, and just walk your way into a championship. The teams, because of NIL, are too experienced now, and they ran into what ended up being an extremely experienced team, albeit lower tier, obviously, but an extremely experienced team. This guy who went off last night is in his 6th year of college basketball. He was like a 4-year player at a Division II school, ends up going up to, now we know his story now. And this guy went off on them and hit 10 threes last night. It took them about 30 minutes of the game to figure out we need to lock this guy up and stop letting him run free. And then the last 10 minutes of the game, Kentucky had somebody dedicated to standing next to him, not even watch the ball. Yep. Literally, not even watch the ball. Just like the Little League game where you have a hot kid, you have like a rec league game and you got the hot kid and the coach goes, you stand there, don't even follow the play. Wherever he goes, you go. That's it, period. And it slowed him down enough to not have 20 threes is what he was kind of on pace for. But Kentucky ran into an experienced team and the experienced team beat them. And it was glorious because watching them lose to someone like that.
They're the villain. They're one of the villains. And
it's amazing.
It's funny. They're a villain in more ways than one now because they were the original ones that, we're not doing anything illegal, guys, when we all know you guys are the masters of it, actually, because you're getting all of these one and dones. And now it's kind of like you're still the villains because you're still somehow pulling this off. They are tried and true. Every good story needs a villain.
Yes.
And they have played it pretty well here as of late.
Yeah. Yes. I do want to play this bite I sent you about what people think about Kentucky, right? Mm-hmm. They've turned the corner on them. This is what happened to Tony Bennett after they lost the other night. The world decided, even though most people, actually, that's not true. The people on the air there who follow college basketball closely, like Wally Zerbiak, or we played his bite, he was like, listen, if you're not going to get the type of athletes you used to get, you're just not going to be able to play this system any longer, and not at this highest level. With the, I think, modest pushback of, though, they were 4th in the ACC with this. They did beat real teams this year.
Right.
I agree. They've been doing this forever. They're kind of playing on the edge by playing this style because if you don't hit your shots, you're keeping everybody in games and you could lose. And then they played a team the other night, and they were way off, and it looked really bad. Sure. So does their system work or not? I guess eye of the beholder. But not unlike with Calipari, because with the exception of, and I hate saying with the exception of, a run to a national championship, Tony Bennett's teams go out early.
Yes.
Every year.
Yep.
Well, guess what's been happening to Calipari? In the height of the one and dones where they had the Anthony Davises, John Walls, all the great players, great players that they had, where they were kind of too big to fail and were going to go pretty far. And then he won one title but they were always a very different team every year because all those guys were lottery picks that he had on his team. They used to lament this. They were like, these guys are not doing what college basketball is. And he's like, I'm just telling these guys the truth. I know you're only going to be here for a year. I'm done playing this
lottery ticket every year.
Right.
That's what they were.
Right. And what, you don't want Anthony Davis on your team? Right. You don't want John Wall? I know he's only going to be here for a year, but I want him for a year. And I actually applauded it. I'm like, he's just playing by you don't like it, but he's just playing by those rules as they are now.
Right.
Now with NIL, it's all different, right?
Yep.
You don't have to play this. We're not going to pay you all that stuff.
Right.
Anybody could go anywhere, and the pile of money is there. So the talent's going to get spread out, and Kentucky isn't just the rest stop for everybody. So it's harder for him to recruit and get the guys. But he still gets high caliber players because of who he is, what their program is, et cetera, et cetera. But he is, again, still sticking to this model of we're going to have all of these freshman stars, and it'll be fine. And it wasn't. And over the last 5 years or something, his record in the NCAA tournament's really bad.
Yep.
Really bad. He goes out early. And he always has a high seed because they have high caliber players. And through the course of a long season, it is hard to beat them. But these one-offs happen when they play experienced teams.
Right.
And it happened last night to them.
Right.
So, all the people whose, then initial response, not unlike with Tony Bennett, I'd fire him. Y'all are nuts.
Right. 99% of America lines up tomorrow. 99%.
Right.
Unless you have one of those blue blood type coaches, every single team hires him tomorrow.
if they hate him that much, he may just go, fine, I'll go somewhere else. And there's a lot of schools that would hire him.
Well, the funny
next
part
day.
is he has a lifetime contract. His buyout is $33 million.
Right. He's not going anywhere.
Which that program can afford.
The same thing I would say to Virginia, you're not firing him.
That's right.
Like, I actually think the Tony Bennett thing is more about, does Tony Bennett want to be there long term? Just because of the changing landscape, it is way harder for him to win. The changing landscape doesn't change Kentucky's ability to win. They just might have to tweak what they're doing. Yeah. And if you think you're going to do better than Calipari, go ask Louisville how that's gone over the last few years, where they've gone through a couple of coaches and they've been awful, right? A traditional power have been awful. You don't want to do that. So Calipari, I think, wields all the power here, even in all of this. And I'd say the same thing about him that I'll say about Tony Bennett, because I saw a clip from Jay Billis today who was like, all you people who are sitting there,
this morning.
All you people who are sitting there going like, he has to change everything he does off of this loss, they just didn't execute well. And this same team that you think, like can't compete like in the current landscape, went to Auburn and won, like went to these places and won this year. So it's not like they can't. They had a bad night. They didn't execute very well. I agree. They didn't execute very well. Was there lack of experience part of it? Maybe.
The problem is it's yes, you can go win some games in the regular season. The problem is this stat. Darren Ravel tweeted this last night. In their last 10 elimination games, so NCAA tournament and SEC tournament, they've been favored in their last 10 games. Yeah. They are 2-8.
2-8. Yes.
I mean, that's just the reality of the situation.
It is, right. That's just the truth of it.
Yeah. Right. Like, now, he's not winning when it matters the most in both tournaments.
Now, and this is everywhere in college sports, but like specifically for him, because of the way that they've run the program with players coming in and out, all of those teams are all very different.
Yes. Right.
All of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
The stars on their teams are very, very different because of one and done, because he's been inviting to the one and done players. And I would still say back to that, and like what, you don't want the 5-star players on your team? Like what? Are you telling him he shouldn't be recruiting these guys he knows is only going to be there for a year? Like, what would be the purpose of going after lower tier players that might stick around for another year or two and let the Reed Shepherds of the world play for somebody else? So I don't think there's everyone just wants to react. And I agree. The results are the results. In the last, 5, 6, 7 years, they've been a bad out.
Yes, correct.
And
exactly.
I don't know how he explains that. I agree. I don't know how he really explains that. But does it mean he needs to shift everything he's doing in the way he acquires players? I don't think so. I just think the landscape's a little different. Like the Dukes of the world, I remember Coach K, I'll never recruit these one-and-dones. And then they kept losing to Calipari. Or Calipari was just kept going farther because he had Anthony Davis on his team.
Right. Yep.
And so eventually Duke started doing it.
Right.
And then everybody was like,
Zion.
yeah. And then everybody was like, oh, I thought you weren't doing that.
Yeah.
And he's like, we just have to adjust to what the landscape is. Does Calipari have to adjust to a new landscape? Maybe. I still have a hard time buying that not having the best players available to you doesn't lead to more wins, but the results are the results. And when you are in a one-and-done situation, who knows? I mean, the funny part is, they were, a 4 seed against a 13. Let's see. Who are the other 13 seeds that they could have played? Because it is possible that they kind of landed the wrong one, really. One of the other 13 seeds is Yale.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I got a hard time buying Yale beating Kentucky in the same way I have a hard time buying them beating Auburn today.
Right.
Right? So, some of it is, they did catch the wrong team. For sure. Of a 13 seed, they did catch the wrong 13 seed.
Sure, but it's Oakland.
I hear you, but when you watched them last night, did that look like a team that was completely ill-prepared or total mid-major? They didn't to me.
No, of course not.
They didn't.
But this
they
is what
shouldn't be a
happens.
5 seed, right?
Right.
But this is what happens. So on this other guy, okay, he's my favorite player ever. This guy has shot made 121 threes. He's literally attempted 8 two-point field goals the entire season.
That's my favorite stat ever.
Now, who would know this? Nobody, except for the people that follow this school.
Right.
Everything about them was amazing. This coach has been there 40 years. They had never won an NCAA. They'd been to the NCAA tournament, never won an NCAA tournament game. 40 years this guy's been there.
Right.
They show Calipari's salary. They show his salary. They tell the story of he does a radio show every Friday at the bar. He has to pay his bill. They make him pay his bill. Calipari, you think Calipari pays for anything?
No.
Well, he might this week. But most weeks, no. This guy has to pay his bill, and his joke was, when we got to the NCAA tournament, they gave me free French fries the other day because they were so happy that I was able to do that.
Right.
Total lifer, never wanted to leave. Love him. He looks the part, too, of like a guy you root for.
Did you see the pictures of what he wears at Christmas time?
No.
He wears these elaborate, ugly sweaters.
Oh, good.
Like one of them had a teddy bear sewn into the front.
Oh.
So it was his gut with a teddy bear on it.
That's that's my new thing in Christmas time, too. I buy an ugly sweater every year now. This year's I got an homage to A Christmas Story. It was an ugly sweater with the lamp from A Christmas Story on it. Yeah, Fragile. And it says it's a major award on the sweater. I'll show it to you. It's an incredible sweater. I got a lot of compliments on it this year.
Look at the Jewish guy wearing ugly Christmas sweaters.
Hey, I'm the Jewish guy with the Christmas sweater. Yeah, I'm into this. I'm into it. You
get a blue one with the star. Or
I'll get into any holiday
on it.
I'll get no, because that's not the holiday. That's a protest vote, is what that is. Jewish guy trying to do the ugly Christmas sweater thing.
That's right.
Like, don't show up to my Hanukkah party in a talit. I don't want to see that. Okay? I'm going to take part in your ritual, which is I will get something that is very Christmas and wear it because I just want to be part of it because I like it.
Fair enough.
I'll do anything if you let me dress up. If there's a dress up, if there's a dress up element to it, I'll do it.
That and clip it.
Yeah. If you let me dress up in costume for it, I will do any kind of thing. That's why I love Halloween every year.
You do have a Halloween
every year.
Every year. Yeah.
Every year I do a Halloween thing.
You had something in the can for this year, and I was like, it's not going to be relevant by the time you get around to it.
Yeah, you're right.
I forget what you had lined up.
I can't. Yeah, I don't remember.
But I was like, that's not going to be relevant in December.
I thought about doing Coach Prime because that would have been extremely relevant.
Right.
And then I was like, they're going to be mad at me.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. What were you going to wear? Like bandana? Like
No, like
his.
I was going to do like the sunglasses he wears. The Colorado hoodie,
like the whistle, all that.
The sunglasses. Nah. But then I have to try to talk like Coach Prime, and that's where I get canceled. That's where I get canceled.
Yeah,
right? That's where I get canceled.
Yeah,
this year, it feels the election's going to be. This is Endgame.
No, don't do that.
We don't know who the characters are yet because there will be.
We kind of do.
We know the main characters. We don't know the side characters.
True.
Who's going to come out of the woodwork? There's going to be some weirdos that are going to come out of the woodwork on this one.
Aaron Rodgers.
Maybe. We were close to that. Very close to that. So anyway, back to Oakland. So this kid.
Jack Goldkey, by the way.
So did you see him after?
Yes.
Where he goes, we're not Cinderella?
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%.
If they didn't make shirts today that say in
black
and gold that says we're not Cinderella and selling it, Motram, we're not Cinderella in the black and gold look. That's amazing. That was one of my favorite quotes of all time because he goes, we ain't that. We're supposed to be here. We're not the team from nowhere, pal. We were invited to the ball for good reason, and we just showed you. I loved it. Oh, I loved it.
What? Who's the school? Was it last year or 2 years ago? From New Jersey or New York? I'm trying to remember.
Peters.
St. Peters.
Yeah.
They went through the same problem, and this is what Oakland's going through right now. Not like Ron, actually. No one knows who to call or email right now.
Right.
Because there's 1,000 interview requests and endorsement deals that are stuck in limbo somewhere because some intern that is their PR person right now has no idea what to do. So there's no new merch. Like I went on their website. It looks
didn't the stories come out that like the St. Peter's guy was a student and he was overwhelmed by all of the
he was a broadcaster. He was a communications major that just was their PR guy because that's how they run it.
Yeah, and then they won 2 games.
And they had to hire somebody.
They were like, oh God. Yes. He's like getting inundated. Jeff Goodman's writing him.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. So
Darren Ravel wants to do a piece from the school.
Gonna guess Oakland, which is in Michigan, by the way, people. I can't imagine the amount of people that were like, California. It's like, no.
My wife even saw it last night, and she goes, I've never even heard of that school. And I go, probably because it's in Michigan. And she goes, why would Oakland be in Michigan? And I go, well, I don't know if you know this, but there's actually an Oakland, Maryland. But, whatever.
Hollywood, Maryland. Too.
Yeah, there's a Hollywood, Maryland, and an Oakland, Maryland.
But on that, I went to because this is my favorite thing to do is let's go just see how janky the team stores are for these. And I did that with them a couple years ago, and it was so bad, and everything was sold out because people were buying everything. On this one, they actually did have tournament T-shirts and hoodies for like normal prices, but it's NIL, guys. Get that dude's jersey on the team store. You're allowed to start selling that sucker. So I'm sure they have all of these deals incoming for them.
So listen, I'm gonna paint a picture here for you. they may not be Cinderella. They're playing NC State next.
Yeah.
Now, they're on the heater of heaters.
Yeah, they're the hottest team in America. I don't care what anyone says.
They ran through the ACC tournament here and won it, and then they won last night.
They have that big guy that is just absurd.
Okay. But that's a team that's been average all year. They're just on a heater, okay?
Right. Yeah.
So if they do it, if they knock them off, the Sweet 16 game for them should be Marquette.
Right.
Who's losing right now in the second half to Western Kentucky. And if that happens, then they're staring down potentially the Elite Eight.
Right.
Very potentially. And if what we hope happens, okay, JMU knocks off Duke, okay, we could have JMU Oakland for the Final Four, which might be the greatest sort of Cinderella thing ever, because I think JMU probably feels the same way. We're 31-3, guy.
Right.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but we ain't no Cinderella either. You want to talk about Cinderella? Talk about somebody that's barely in this with some 16-15 record that really just barely got in and suddenly got hot and they're out of nowhere. JMU is not really out of nowhere, and this team is trying to tell you, we know you don't pay attention to us, but watch us play. We're not some also-ran you've never heard of. And that dude was lighting it up. He was RoboCop. He was unbelievable last night. And if he does that again, who's going to be bigger, him or Caitlin Clark? If he does that again, a whole week of it, they're going to be talking to that guy.
They got to win their next one. They got to.
Yeah, well, of course.
They have to win their next
if
one.
If they win tomorrow,
it's a week of talking.
It's a week of this guy's on SportsCenter. This guy's on McAfee. I think he was on McAfee today. This guy's on this show. This guy's on that show. CBS Morning Show is going to do an interview with him. They're going to go to the school and talk to him. He could be Caitlin Clark, this guy. What's his name? Godel?
Godel.
Is that his last name? Godel? Something like that. Gothel?
I was laughing because you...
Geedle?
I just hadn't pulled up.
Gonzel?
Because you didn't... Golke?
Golke.
There you go. Jack Golke.
I love him. And he, by the way, now, for that school... all-time Cole hero.
Retire his number.
That's
what you do.
Until the end, he's Jason Kelsey. Until the end of time, they ought to sell his jersey in the team store. 10 threes against Kentucky in the first ever NCAA tournament win in school's history. That guy is the all-time cult hero.
The best part was, and I went on a little mini rant this morning about how this is why Twitter will never die, because sports is going to keep it alive. Because nights like last night, they're like, here's Kentucky losing to the guy that's going to be selling insurance 4 months from now. Somebody else was saying, this is the guy that's sitting at the table wondering if he or his wife's insurance is better for him and the kids. Like, that's who they lost to. That guy. Normal guy.
So next year at the crazy three-point shoot-off, I want
you bring him out.
Him, Steph Curry, Caitlin Clark. Let's go. Let's see how it works out. Let's do that one. Golke.
What I loved was his actual quote.
Gelka?
Golke. Jack Golke. We'll get his name right. Unlike other people.
I love him.
I loved his quote, though, saying, like, I know I'm not an NBA player, but I can go toe-to-toe with any of these guys any given night. I was like, yes.
I love it.
Yes.
And he's old school, too.
These dudes.
Old school. He does that crazy run all the way around, catch, shoot.
Yep.
If you can hit that, it's unstoppable. And he did that for like 30 minutes of that game before Kentucky finally realized.
Well, it was like,
put somebody on him. What are you waiting for?
It was very much like, you're not letting this guy do it again, are you? And 30 minutes later, they're still letting him do it.
It was like after he hit the fifth one, aren't you like, wake up,
what
guys.
What are you doing? Yeah,
come on, Cal. What are you waiting for? If you shut him down, are they really going to beat you?
Right.
It was awesome. I loved the coach. I loved him. I loved the whole story. I loved the look right in the camera and say, we're not Cinderella.
Oh, it's the best.
They need to be those shirts need to be made so when they get to next week, everybody who shows up to their games are wearing the "We're Not Cinderellas."
They're gonna have to. I know how this is gonna work. They're gonna have to win the next one, which is possible. But like, they're not gonna get it done fast enough in a day.
This is where Motram comes in.
I know. Yeah.
Call them up. Get that on speed dial.
What T-shirt maker in the city can they get?
What do you need? 5,000 of these by tomorrow.
Right.
5,000 of these by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Where would they? Let me see. Where would they play? Dallas. They'd have to go to Dallas if they get through.
Okay.
Can you get a flight from wherever that is in Michigan down to Dallas? Are they near Detroit? Where are they? Where is this place?
They can. Hold on. It's Oakland University. So hold on.
Where are they located?
Give me a map here. They are, because it's not coming up. Here we go. Oakland County, Michigan. They are, let's see until I find something that I recognize.
Mm-hmm.
They're north of Troy.
Rochester, Michigan. Okay. Let's see where that is. Rochester,
They're
Michigan.
Like way north of Detroit. They're way north of Detroit.
Rochester, Michigan is not anywhere near an airport. You got to travel down to Detroit. Yeah, you got to go down to Detroit. You're not near there. Well,
it's like in between Flint and Detroit.
Yeah. All right, so they're probably like a half hour away from Detroit. Half hour, 45 minutes away from Detroit. Oh, and here's the other one that will happen for them too. And we learned this locally. If they win the next one, if they win tomorrow and get at least another week, and they somehow get to the Elite Eight, it's going to be a George Mason thing.
Right.
Like, do you know how many people are going to suddenly potentially apply to go to this school
absolutely.
if they actually do this? Mm-hmm. And your guy, Gatsky, the Great Gatsby, whatever. When he goes back to that school, if they, oh man,
they're an hour.
Leonardo DiCaprio, that guy. That's what he is.
They're an hour from Detroit Metropolitan Airport.
Okay, there you go.
They're good.
Detroit to Dallas, baby. Let's go. Let's go. All right, we'll take a quick break. Bram and Callow, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Here's what's going on in the NCAA tournament. 10:20 to go second half, 12-5 matchup. San Diego State and UAB tied at 49. Western Kentucky, the 15 seed that had run out to a 7-point lead at half, is now trailing Marquette 53-48. 14:35 to go second half. The 2 seed has started the second half on a 17-5 run to run away from the Hilltoppers for now. UConn, the 1 seed, leads Stetson 8-0 just a few minutes into their game. And a rough start for New Mexico, who's an 11 seed against Clemson. The Tigers lead the Lobos 25-9. 11:32 to go first half there. The 2 finals of the day. Northwestern is a 9 seed, beat the 8 seed Florida Atlantic 77-65 in overtime, and Baylor was an easy winner in a 3-14 matchup over Colgate 92-67. Let's see. What will happen to Shohei Ohtani? Well. CBS Sports did a nice breakdown with a couple of legal analysts asking what kind of jeopardy is he in, dependent on what level of involvement he had. Clearly, if he directed bets to an illegal bookmaker on his own behalf, he's going to get suspended for a year minimum.
Right.
And not whether it's baseball or not, it's because it's an illegal bookmaker.
Yep.
Here's what the rule says that they explain in this. Any player, umpire, or club or league official or employee who places bets with an illegal bookmaker or agents or illegal bookmakers shall be subject to a penalty as the commissioner deems appropriate in light of the fact and circumstances of the conduct. Any player, umpire, club, or league official or employee who operates or works for an illegal bookmaking business shall be subject to a minimum of 1 year suspension by the commissioner. For purposes of this provision, an illegal bookmaker is an individual who accepts places, handles wagers, et cetera, et cetera. We don't know what's going on here. What's being painted at this point is the interpreter lost a lot of money to illegal bookmakers, right? Or one specific one. Right. And Shohei Ohtani, what the picture they're trying to paint, at least initially, was that he helped his friend pay off a massive debt by giving him $4.5 million in what sounds to be $500,000 increments, right? Nine $500,000 increments. Okay, that's hard to believe. So because it's so hard to believe, they changed their story very quickly and said, no, he got robbed. It's theft.
Yep, right, exactly.
That somehow this person had access to his accounts and wrote these checks, and somehow Shohei Ohtani didn't know that, and he's a victim.
Right.
Here.
Exactly. Yep.
How much will the person who is in the center of it, talk to officials about what really happened? I don't know.
Right.
So the other thing is this, and let's just say for the purpose of this conversation, that this guy, the interpreter, doesn't totally implicate Ohtani as the person who directed the bets. Okay.
Right.
We'll take him at face value.
Sure.
Ohtani says, I didn't bet.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
This is the other problem he runs into. They had on a lawyer Nelson Rose, who is an expert on gambling law and the co-founder of the California Council of Problem Gambling. And this is what he said about all of this to this point. So there's so many potential crimes here, state and federal. And the big dangers with violating the anti-gambling laws, they're all written to go after organized crime, which means all the organized crime statutes can then kick in, like RICO and money laundering. He said, if Ohtani did knowingly wire the money to pay the debt, either to Mizuhara or directly to a bookie, he could be considered complicit in helping an illegal gambler collect the debt. So, even if he's doing it out of just helping his friend, he still has committed a federal crime by directing money to an illegal bookmaker and therefore is complicit in the crime.
Right.
To what degree a judge would punish him over that, he'd probably appeal to the court that I just tried to bail my friend out and didn't realize that, I was committing a crime. I was just trying to help him get out of trouble. Then a court would have to decide how lenient they would be. But what this guy is saying is, on its face, if he in any way directed the money to him for whatever reason, even if it was just to pay back the debt, well, he's committed at least one federal organized crime of which he could lose his standing. He could lose his job.
Right.
The Dodgers might be able to void the contract. He could go to jail.
Right.
There's all sorts of things that could
Not in
happen
jail,
here.
is he?
Which is why I think they quickly changed the story to theft.
Correct. Yeah,
because when they realized, whenever the lawyer first heard him say he was helping him pay off a debt, the lawyer's alarm bells went off and said, you can't say that,
right,
because if you do, you are admitting a crime. And he's probably saying, but I didn't bet on the games. And they're going, it doesn't matter. You paid an illegal bookmaker.
That's right. And that's why I was getting at yesterday of why it was fishy they changed the story up, because I was going to say the translator could have gone to Ohtani and just said, hey, man, I'm in a bunch of debt, right? Like, debt can come up any which way. It can come up through gambling. It can come up through spending. Maybe the guy opened up 1 million credit cards or something. That's where I was kind of like, well, Ohtani could just say, my friend was literally in debt and I was giving him money to get out of it. I didn't know for what. But when you're giving someone that much money, you are asking,
what's it for?
How did you get in $4.5 million of debt? I'm going to go with.
Did you buy a car you couldn't afford? Here's $50,000.
A car.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Did you buy a mansion in LA?
Right.
Like, what'd you do?
What would it be?
Right.
So here's what this guy, Nelson Rose, says this. In other words, he's helping the bookie collect the debt. It gets extraordinarily bad if he knew any of this was going on and agreed to it, which is why the lawyers, I think now I'm starting to see, why did the lawyers change the story? Everybody initially thought it was Ohtani betting,
right,
and this guy was paying the debts on his behalf to try to separate him from it. That's what everybody thought was going on. But this actually makes sense to the story of why they said it was theft. But it might all be true. He helped this guy. I'm willing to believe this now. The lawyers heard he helped this guy and said, you can't say that because you're admitting to a federal crime.
Right.
So we have to change the story. And then this guy, Rose, sums it up with this by saying, what I can't figure out is why the lawyers didn't tell everybody just to shut up. And so this is all kind of making more sense now. And so we'll see where that goes with Ohtani, and we'll see if baseball steps in. And nobody at this point has been able to kind of figure out whether baseball will step in or not. I've got a good one in the NCAA tournament. 156 to go. 12-5 matchup. San Diego State UAB tied at 62. Marquette is trying to pull away from Western Kentucky after having a first half where they trailed by 7 to the Hilltoppers. Marquette's the 2 seed. They now lead 71-63, under 6 minutes to go in that game. UConn, the defending champs, is blowing out Stetson 30-8, 12 minutes into their game, first half. Clemson has run out to a 32-19 lead, make that 34-19 with 5:51 to go in the first half. That's a 6-11 matchup. The Tigers are the higher seed there. 2 finals from today. Northwestern advanced as a 9 seed over the 8 seed Florida Atlantic, 77-65 in overtime. They will, in all likelihood, play UConn in the second round. And Baylor was an easy winner today in a 3-14 matchup over Colgate, 92-67. The Orioles, this has been an ongoing thing for a few days, and this is a good problem. They have too many good players. One particularly really, really good player, though,
maybe the number one prospect in baseball is you're referencing here?
Is not going to start on the opening day roster. It was announced today that Jackson Holliday did not make the team. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it. They've decided to send him back to the minors because everybody's reacting to the part of it where you go, this makes no sense because he might be, of all the really talented players they have, he might be the best one.
Right, correct.
No, we haven't seen it. I've seen Gunnar Henderson do it. I've seen Adley Rutschman do it. Yep. We haven't seen him do it. Yep. So, like, in fairness to them, because they're off to Hall of Fame starts to their careers, let's be fair about that. He hasn't. Mike Elias asked today, why did he do this? Said, this is a 20-year-old who's played 18 games in AAA and is also in a position change and has not faced or produced or had the opportunity to produce a ton against upper-level minor league left-handed pitching in particular. So that's the reason he's giving. He's just citing inexperience.
I'll be very specific on that answer, though. I do like Mike whenever he does that.
So I guess they're going to make sure that he gets some of this stuff and, you know, and play more. And when you say that, I'll hear it out, but I think everybody's looking at them and going, I don't know, man. Like, This team is so primed to win. It's like, I think you kind of need to unleash the beast. I think that's just the sense I get from this whole thing. You guys are in a definitive window right now where you could be a monster for at least a few years and then dependent on new ownership of who you're going to pay and how you're going to retain them. That's going to be interesting problems for them because they have too many good players. But at this point, not unlike the last couple of years where clearly the ownership was hell-bent on not spending on anything. Yeah. They were held back from being the beast they could be by not acquiring players at the trade deadline or in the winter that would make them better, right?
Yep.
This time around, after they got Corbin Burns, right, which was, I think, move one of trying to unleash the beast, get some pitching help here. And I actually assume that, you know, assuming David Rubenstein's the full owner by the time the trade deadline comes along, if they are where everybody thinks they're going to be, I bet he would approve acquisitions, which would be different than what's been from last year. A reliever, maybe another starter. You know, every year there's always few available, right? In this case, I look at Elias and I go, unleash the beast, man. Release the Kraken. Like, why would you not put this guy out there? He clearly makes you even better than you already are, but that's the reasons they're giving.
The basic breakdown I saw from Dan Connolly today, who writes up there in Baltimore, was mainly that the starting lineup is rubber stamp at the moment. The usual suspects from last year, the Mullins, Mountcastles, McKenna's of the world, and that basically it's going to come down to 3 bench spots. And his assumed reasoning, besides Elias's very specific answer on that, was mainly they probably don't want to bring him up unless he's playing every single day.
So that's what it is, that they don't believe they have a spot for him every day and they just don't want him sitting on the bench?
I think that's what it was. Or they don't want to platoon him either, that they want him to get 75% of the starts and they would have to be taking a starting position away from someone else, and it would be at a position that, he's right, hasn't played in a game yet at at least at a major league level. Here's my main takeaway on it is Elias has been right about this for the last couple of years. As much as I don't like it, and Mike Elias I trust on this one, and that, you know what, you've been so right about all of this. Everyone was pissed when Adley wouldn't get the call up, and when he finally got called up, instantly was amazing. Same thing with Gunnar Henderson. I kind of trust his judgment here, as much as it irks me, because it does scream like you guys are almost trying to manipulate the service time again. I will say,
maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not. But
I will hear out I don't want to platoon him.
Right. And
he shouldn't be on the bench. And I would rather him be, at this juncture, in the minor leagues playing every day than sitting on the bench. And the reality is, he's going to come up on this roster at some point.
Absolutely. And so this is also what I was going to say as well. The fan in me, as much as I'm irked that he's not going to be on the opening day roster, the other part of me that's also a fan means you get to make that day its own thing. And I do think that is something worth throwing out there. Like, the day Adley got called up, it was the day of the Preakness that year. In 2022, I think Adley got called up for the first game that he played.
Yeah.
It was a special day. Like, people flocked to the ballpark, even though it was last second call up, right? Gunnar Henderson gets called up, and people kind of get oohed and awed and went into that game. When they call him up, hopefully it's a home game and it's another event that you get to kind of circle on the Orioles' kind of resurgence here, that when he gets called up, it's a big deal. And it's not just lost in the opening day shuffle.
Right.
I think that's where I've landed too, is maybe you kind of want to make this really special. He's the number 1 prospect in baseball. Opening day is really a big deal in and of itself. It doesn't really matter what the roster looks like.
And they kind of don't need him.
Correct.
Like,
and so what I'm
that's,
getting...
But that's kind of the part of where I'm just like, unleash the Kraken. Not only do they not need him, he might make their lineup so ridiculous
Sure, but
that it makes them practically unbeatable.
But also then imagine if they go, 23-10 in the first 33 games, and then you call them up. Like, I don't know. I can argue it every which way here. All I'm saying is I like that it's going to be its own event now. That when he gets called up, that'll be another excuse for everyone to go out to Camden Yards because he gets called up for the first time.
Yes, I agree. All right, let me take a quick break. Another shot across the bow at Ted. We'll talk about that next. Bram and Callow Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
Back to the voice of the burgundy and gold, Bram Weinstein, on ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
All right, here's what's going on in the tournament today. Marquette is running away from Western Kentucky, 2:15 matchup, 2:04 to go. Marquette trailed by 7 at half. They now lead 84-67. Late first half, minute 26 to go, 6:11 matchup. Clemson leads New Mexico 38-28. UConn is destroying Stetson, 46-13. Late first half, 2:37 to go there. UConn, obviously the defending national champs and a number 1 seed. They would face Northwestern if they win. The Wildcats beat Florida Atlantic in a 9-8 matchup, 77-65. Northwestern was the lower seed. Baylor cruised past Colgate in a 3-14 matchup, 92-67. And this one just went final in a 5-12 matchup. San Diego State survived to beat UAB, 69-65. We were just talking about Jackson Holliday and the decision that the Orioles made to send him back to the minors to start this season. I still believe he'll probably come up at some point, but we'll see. The Nationals also have sent down their stars. James Wood will not start on the opening day roster, right?
Yeah, it's James Wood, Dylan Cruz, and Brady House. Those are the 3 big names that all got sent down. I didn't think Cruz was going to make the opening day roster. I think Wood was making his case to do that. I also said, too, some of these top prospects, if you put them on the opening day roster, you actually get a supplemental draft pick, like a high draft pick, if you put them on the roster and they stay up. That doesn't happen. Rizzo also had the quote at the beginning of spring training saying they have to beat the door down to make the opening day roster.
James Wood didn't?
Right. That's what our friends at TalkNats tweeted that quote out saying, what does that mean?
I don't know. All spring, I just kept seeing highlights of him hitting these home runs that were absurd. So he didn't?
Right. So.
Okay. Listen,
that is what it is.
These two teams are in very different places.
Of course.
With the Orioles, I'm going unleash the Kraken.
Right.
With the Nationals, I'm kind of like, I have no choice but to be patient whether they're playing or not.
That's right.
So,
Right.
You know what?
Yes, this is
Y'all
true.
do you for now, is the way I feel about it. And again, same thing. They'll be playing at some point.
Right. I think
in their cases, unlike the Orioles, I think Jackson Holliday makes his way to the roster. Would it shock you if those guys don't actually get to the roster this year, that they play it out for a whole other year and make them stay in the minor leagues? Like that actually, just considering where they are as a team, it wouldn't shock me if they just leave them down there for the
House,
year.
maybe. But Dylan Cruz is the number 2 overall pick, and you're kind of poker chip right now for the fans to stay interested.
James Wood, too.
And James Wood, too. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying, both of them. I'd be shocked if both of them weren't on the main roster at some point this season. They're going to be too bad as well. Like they're going to need a jump start, in that random July game.
This is what gets to the point of it. What does attendance look like?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right.
And if attendance is bad,
right,
it may get the ownership to say, "What can we do?"
Yep. That's right.
To get people excited.
Correct.
And they say, well, there's one thing we can do because we're not going to trade for anybody.
Correct. Nor should they, by the way.
One or both of these guys up, and at least we'll have a bump for a little while because people will go, I got to go see them play.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
So that may accelerate that.
And
but I wouldn't be surprised if their idea is we should just kind of leave them down there for another year. I don't know.
It gets ridiculous if whoever is in their respective starting spots is not producing at a good clip. That it's keeping them down there, essentially, is what I'm getting at. I don't foresee that happening with the Nats. Their roster doesn't have that good of a makeup. So,
all right, let's get to the latest salvo at Ted and his plans to build, as Louise from Richmond calls it, the Glen Dome.
She also tweeted today, by the way.
Yeah, she tweeted, since you're trying to back out of D.C., why wouldn't we believe that you would do it to Virginia, too, if we give you all this money? So Louise is just having her day. She's like the guy from Oakland. Out of nowhere, she just showed up. She's dropping threes on everybody. You can't be stopped.
She's going to keep shooting.
She's hit 10 threes so far this spring.
Why is no one on her?
Yeah, no one's on her. Someone's got to get on her. You didn't know about
too
her?
late.
Yeah.
Day before the vote.
So in a very long letter from the Attorney General, so that's of people you never want to get a letter from, especially a 3-pager. Yeah. It's the Attorney General of the city.
Mr. Leonsis, we have a letter. It's from the AG. Who's AG? What's that short for? The AG.
I will spare you the first page and a half of it, because the first page and a half of it is a setup of, I love DC, you love DC. Remember that part? We're trying to all be on the same team here. But it takes him about, I don't know, probably 1,000 words too long to get to the point that he needed to get to. And that point was, we will sue you if we have to. We don't want to do that. And he even says this at some point. We don't want to do that. But let me read for you where we get to the nitty gritty. And I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer here. So I'm not going to pretend to understand why, to know whether the legal standing is on Ted's side or is on the AG side. I have a hard time. One, why did this come out now? We've had a couple of months to send something like this kind of salvo back to them. And two, didn't Ted and Monumental kind of know what the ground rules were with breaking the lease, which is what is being accused of here.
Yeah, right.
So in the letter, it says this. Your letter, Ted's letter, recognizes that among its contributions to Monumental Sports and Entertainment over the years, the district publicly financed extensive improvements to the arena back in 2007, just 10 years after the arena opened. In July 2007, the district enacted legislation that gave DC Arena $50 million to renovate the arena. Those funds were raised through municipal bonds. The council expressly conditioned the public funding on that and that commitment to extend the original ground lease for an additional 20 years, thereby enabling the district and its taxpayers that the Wizards and the Capitals would continue to play their home games at the arena through 2047. The July 2007 legislation did not authorize their group to establish or revoke the lease extension upon prepayment of the outstanding bond debt at some unknown time in the future, nor did any of the representatives of the D.C. officials suggest such a possibility during that legislative process. On the contrary, they all agreed on the public record that in exchange for the $50 million in public financing, D.C., the group, would exercise a 10-year lease extension, full stop, and that made sense, allowing D.C. to terminate the lease extensions would have permitted the retraction of consideration, and it provided the $50 million. And he essentially ends with, therefore, your lease isn't through 2027, it's through 2047. Now, one of the things that's a big difference. So
you think?
There's a couple things here. Ted said openly, and on purpose, and this is why I'm saying, it's not that he didn't know this or is surprised by this. He said openly, we know if we prepay what we owe, we can then break this lease. The Attorney General has done some digging on that and seems to believe that that is not the case. But, and I'm not a lawyer here, he is saying that they verbally, publicly committed to that, not necessarily in writing. And what you say doesn't, we're going to be here forever. Clearly doesn't play. So I don't know, because I don't know what the legislation was or have seen it. But the fact that this took this long to get to this point where he's threatening to sue them on some level for some amount of money, and probably more than whatever the repayment is. So it's like one of two things. If you leave, you're going to owe us a certain amount of money on top of this, because we can't technically stop you, but you're going to owe the city X amount of millions of dollars, right? Or it will make it so cost prohibitive you don't want to move, is what my read is on this. So it doesn't stop this from happening, but he is putting up you're going to pay a premium to get out of this, to which I would say back to him this. So you gave them the improvements for the stadium. We all know it was for the Capitals and the Wizards. But if Ted follows through with his promise of, we're not leaving the arena, the Caps and Wizards are, we intend to put the Mystics in there, we intend to run shows in there, then we're not actually leaving the arena.
The technicality there.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could break our lease with you in 2027, or since you're saying we need to stay till 2047, we aren't actually leaving.
Right.
So I actually, the more I think about this, I think it's not a real threat.
The other part about this too is I'm sure
he's publicly stated they intend to use the arena for the Mystics and other purposes if the district is up for allowing them to do so, which I'm sure they're not overly pleased with. But like, he has publicly stated that. So this letter, he could say back to them, we're not actually leaving. We do intend to run the arena. It's just the hockey and the basketball games aren't going to occur there.
Well, and also we don't know what not leaving is defined by. He could agree to play one Capitals game and one Wizards game in DC, and that's technically them playing in the district, right? Like,
right.
It's ugly, but we know how this works with billionaires. They can all get off with technicalities, and they could play one preseason game for each club and kind of honor that too. So I'm kind of with you. If it's a verbal thing, but it wasn't in writing, but maybe that verbal altercation or that conversation is on the record somewhere, that's the only way I see kind of that actually being a real threat. But either way, they're going to make it really difficult for them to just kind of pick up and go.
Listen, DC has a right to be mad about a lot of things. The biggest one, I think, is, they built this new arena where the Mystics play now that's going to go basically vacant once they pull them out of there, unless they change their mind and decide to leave the Mystics in there. But if they go by what their plan is, should they move, they plan on moving them there. Well, what in the world is going into this arena then, right? We don't know.
Yeah, right.
So that's left them, the city, kind of high and dry with a building that is not going to draw like that, unless you can come up with some other, I don't know what, that would go into this arena that would make it worthwhile. So that's problem one. Problem two that they should be mad at, they don't want the Wizards and the Capitals to leave, obviously. They have, I think a little late, at least publicly made an offer to try to keep them in the city and keep them in that footprint. And he said in this letter that it's about the same amount of money that you're getting from Virginia, but it really isn't. I mean, the real estate that he would be basically buying into is far superior than what he's getting in the city, just in terms of land size, ability to expand, all of the different things that are happening. So, I don't think it's the same. They can claim it's the same. And I would just say back, I get why they write this. They're trying to basically make this a punitive thing to do, to actually leave. But I don't think that they're standing to stop them from actually doing it. I think that they would take them to court to try to get them to pay a fee to get out beyond repayment of the bonds at 2027. And I'm no lawyer here, so I don't know whether that would hold up or not. But in my reading of it, it doesn't sound like that would be the case, because Leonsis is just going to argue in front of a court, okay, the hockey and the basketball isn't playing there, but we have no intention of actually leaving the footprint. We intend on running it. Now, I think it's preposterous that it's going to be used to the degree that it did, or that it's going to be the anchor that it is, and I do think it's going to harm the city significantly. But legally, they're not vacating necessarily, or they're not saying they're going, at least not initially. They're not initially saying they're going to vacate it. What I don't believe from them at all is this part of it. When they say we're going to put the Mystics there, and then we're going to do concerts, and we're going to do Disney on Ice, it's going to be amazing, right?
It's great. It's going to be plenty of events.
What's going to stop them in 2 to 5 years when they're not filling it up enough to go, we're moving all these things out to our other arena because it's just not working out and you guys are stuck with this thing? And I think we all know that that's what's going to happen at some point.
Yep, right.
The Disney on Ice week is not going to make up for the Capitals and the Wizards not being there. It's just not. We can't have a dude perfect residency. It's not going to work out. It's not. We all know this. So on that part, Ted, I don't believe you. I believe to leave and not be punitively attacked by the city, which is what that letter was you needed to say, we do intend to run this arena continually if you want us to, and here's what we're going to do in it. For how long, guys? For how long?
Right.
Not that long.
Correct.
They could move the Mystics to that arena in Virginia too if they really had to.
That's right.
They could ask for them to go back to the other arena in DC that's new and up and running, and why would DC turn that down? Of course they would want them there and back there, and then all those other shows. Boy, there better be a lot of them.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm going to that Olivia Rodrigo thing. Guess where that's not going to be next time around?
That's right.
Not in Cap One. It's going to be at the one in Virginia.
Yeah,
why
correct.
in the world would they put it there?
That's what I said. Do you think you're going to pump up Bruce Springsteen coming to D.C.
No.
You're not going to put him at the new arena?
Right.
Like, come on now. Like,
No way.
What are you doing there? Not only that, you're also competing with all the other venues across the area too. So you are just you're eating into your own business regardless of however you want to spin it.
Yeah. The two things that, in the spin of the monumental opportunity that's put in front of me, that like there are parts of this, I'll reiterate, that I'm actually for, and I understand what he's doing, and I get why he's doing it. And I also, if it happens, because there's been a roadblock here, but if it happens, the two things that stand out to me that I know that they're either underplaying or outwardly, potentially, and I don't want to say they're lying, but I see the inroads of lying, is this idea that they're going to continually run Capital One Arena for any length of time that is going to fill that arena with viable products consistently. I don't believe that. One, there's way too much competition in this city, including the new arena that he's going to build. So when they bring in the big-time acts, maybe they'll throw DC a bone every once in a while and have somebody go there. But when it's SZA, it's going to be at their new arena. It's not going to be at that one. And if the Mystics don't fill up, to the number of tickets that makes it viable to stay there, and maybe they will, but it's still only 20 dates. And if they can't fill the calendar enough to warrant running this, well, guess what's going to happen in 2 to 5 years? They're going to figure out a way to stop working in that arena altogether. So I don't believe them about this. We're going to continually run that arena and make it a place for families to go. I don't believe you, right? In the same, and you've lost what I think is your credibility on that by doing what you did in the first place. You're taking the teams, you're moving them out there. Why would I believe you about doing what's right about that arena moving forward? So you've lost your credibility on that part. And I don't believe that within 2 to 5 years you wouldn't completely vacate, because we all know that that's a distinct possibility unless you do figure out a way to get very good, viable, constant year-round entertainment in there that people want. And then everybody, all's well, ends well. But I don't believe that. There's too much competition. And the other one that they're underselling and not talking about is the cost to go to those games in Virginia. The people who are going to pay for that are you and me, the paying customer, who are going to see ticket prices skyrocket, parking prices skyrocket. If I want to stay in the hotel there, it's going to be $8,000 a night. I'm sure your hot dogs are not going to be cheap. I'm sure it's going to be $20 Bud Lights. I already know what's going to happen here. And that's the part they don't want to talk about is project. And I know you have this, Ted. Project out for me the cost of a Capitals game on a Wednesday night against Calgary in the middle of February. Right. What is it going to cost for me and my family to go see your game under this new arena? And if he's going to be honest with me, I think the number is going to be striking and scary. We're going to subsidize it by paying to go to these games. Now, if there's a demand at that price, who am I to argue with it?
Of course.
It's market conditions. I could sit here and complain till I'm blue in the face that I don't want to spend $200 to sit in the upper deck of a Wizards game. I can complain all I want. But if people are willing to do it, well, that's the market. That's what I think is going to be happening here too. And that's the part where I recoil from it. Someone who has... Listen, no real world problems with that stuff, but looks at that and goes, that's abhorrent.
Yeah, right.
And I don't want to take part in something like that. It's already too expensive to go to these games, in my opinion. And I don't want to spend $1,000 to go to a random Wizards game on a Tuesday night against the Pelicans. But that's what you're setting up for me right now.
Correct,
It's what you're setting up.
I think this is the awakening that they're going to have to deal with is what you just said is it's really pricey to go there. But you know what it is? It is a night out in D.C. It is people that are going into the city. This is where the location thing, as much as convenience, as much as we've talked about it, is a lot of people justify that by going, you know what? I live in Maryland, but I haven't been in the city in a while. Let's go see a game and we'll hang out and do whatever we want to do for one night. Same thing with the people in Virginia. There are people that live where the new stadium's going to be, but literally say out loud, I like going into the city for a game. It makes it feel special. This is where I keep pointing out the deja vu of the Redskins leaving RFK to Landover. It just keeps coming up here because you and I have had this conversation. I only went to RFK a few times when the Redskins played, but you went all the time. You always say it. Everyone always says it. It was special to drive into the city and go see that team.
Yes.
Not unlike, though, it might not be the same deal because there's a lot more games, but people like taking the Metro into the city, being right near the mall where the arena is because it is special. It is right in the middle of the city. People are willing to pay a little more for that experience. I think, because it's a nostalgic thing. Now you're going to put the new arena over there. I'm telling you, people are not going to pay more money for that type of experience.
Well,
I just don't see it.
And here's the other part of it that, like, I already know, and this is why they won't talk about it. Like, I already know what you're about to do, and you keep saying the taxpayers pay nothing. Well, somebody's got to pay for it. It's going to be the people who are using the arena, the customers, right? And there's going to be surcharges, entertainment taxes, and all sorts of things that are going to pop up everywhere you go. And this is what I would say back to you. Like, I understand why you're doing this. A lot of sports teams are not just sports teams anymore, they're real estate companies. Like, the Commanders are looking at either RFK or all these things as a real estate company. Commanderland. We talked about this for a long time. The Braves successfully did it with the Battery down in Atlanta. It's what John Angelos wanted with the Orioles. I think it was, the way he was talking about it was so kind of, sounded like he wanted them to give him the Inner Harbor, but because they couldn't figure out where else to put it, and the mayor and the governor are like, we're not putting it in Dundalk, guy. Like, we're just not, we're not going to do that, right? You have They were in a tough spot because they have a great stadium everybody loves, and a lot of money's been poured into it, and they're going, guys, you're staying there. But I hear out the owners who go, but this is what's happening in our marketplace. Like, the Mavericks were sold to the Sands Corporation because they're going to build a giant new thing with a stadium attached to a casino and all sorts of things down there. It's a real estate play. So I would say back to Ted, it's why I understand what you're doing. I get why you're doing it. I get why you think you need to be competitive this way. And I also get all the money you're about to get in the land you're about to get. It's good for you too. It's a win-win-win for you. I totally understand that. Here's what I would say back to you. One of the issues, if you ever have an issue with downtown D.C., is you don't own Clyde's, you don't own those bars, you don't own those restaurants, you don't own all this stuff, right? Well, if you have this property, you run the leases on this restaurant and this bar and that bar. Well, you know what? Do the right thing here. Since you're going to be making all this money on all of these different things that are going to be happening in Ted World down there, keep the prices to get into the stadium to see the games, flatline them. You're going to make all the more money on top of owning the leases down there with all the restaurants. This is what the Lerners did. They redeveloped all the land down there. All of those buildings are owned by them.
Right.
So all of those leases go back to their bottom line. It benefits them. What they really need is people just to show up to the games, to frequent all of these different places. So if you keep the prices at a reasonable spot, then you benefit by not only getting them into the stadium and you gouge them on the food and concessions and all that stuff there, but when they go out, they're going into, quote unquote, your bars and restaurants.
That's right.
The part that I don't like about this is, and this is why they won't talk about it, their prices are going to go up to subsidize doing this, to go out there. And at the same time, they're going to be double dipping with me going to the restaurant and the bar before and after the games that they now either own or are leasing.
That was the whole point on the...
This is why I want to hear you tell me the prices of the tickets aren't changing, because I know your bottom line is exponentially going to change by the footprint that you get and you're running.
It's also why... people started to, after weeks and weeks of it, you had Abe Poland's son come out and say, my dad could have had every bit of land around that arena and decided not to because he wanted to enrich the area, which, by the way, I keep saying, gave him a mulligan for the Wizards/Bullets for the most part. People didn't really criticize him as heavily as modern sports owners are criticized.
He was extremely philanthropic in that way.
And what I'm getting at here is Ted hasn't even gone out of his way to say, hey, I'm going to Virginia. Here's how I'm helping you guys out. This is where you and I have agreed on this. The PR behind this thing has been so god-awful with every step of the way of how is this benefiting and literally anybody else except your empire? I think that is where I've kind of landed here of, you know what? You can tell me it's building up this stuff up, but tell me what specifically you're helping out with the locals out in Virginia, or how are you going to help out the ones that are at Capital One Arena right now? Maybe you strike a deal with them to say, hey, we know we're pulling out of here. We'll give you first right of building whatever you want next to the arena or something, whatever you need to discuss.
If all these vacancies are down there, and that's a big part of the problem here, why doesn't the city work with you to acquire these buildings or acquire these spaces and give you what you're looking for? And it won't be the exact same footprint, but it'll be the same bottom line difference maker that you're looking for.
That's what I've been screaming about. Like the city should be able to give them actually what they want. They won't all be in the same building, but you can't tell me the city of D.C. can consolidate 2 office buildings that are half full. Like this is where my big red flag has been had you, Monumental, just come out and said what I said was buried at the end of that long ass email was, oh, here's the land difference. And the land difference was massive. And I'm going, one, that should be your number one PR thing, that it's land. Then the city of D.C. then can flip back and go, Okay, it's a land and it's a building thing. Let's see what we can do. Let's see where we can meet you halfway with this by filling up some of the already vacant office buildings. They don't want to do that.
This was a PR problem. They came out and said the wrong things about it.
They continue to say the wrong things.
Right, they're like, we love everybody. Don't you love us back? And we're going, we know what you're doing.
Right.
And then I'm like, okay, you want to make good on this? Tell us you're not going to price gouge us.
Yep, right, exactly.
Because you shouldn't have to off of what you're getting here.
Sure.
But I know you're going to. You want to know why? Because you've tried to sell. They want to get this through politically, and you can't sell. Give a billionaire $1.5 billion in a tax credit. They're not going to put that through on a button. They're never.
Right.
Louise ain't doing it. A lot of people aren't doing that. But when they say we're not doing it, well, then they go, how does it get subsidized? Well, guess what? Everything there is going to be so abhorrently priced that the customers are going to end up paying for it. And he's not saying that part. And the whole, this whole cockamamie, we're going to keep running Capital One. You'll see. With what exactly?
Yeah, lay me the plans out.
Give me 2 years. I bet you pull out of that.
Right.
And we all know it. We all know it's going to be vacant most nights. I trust you'll try to put the Mystics there. I trust that you'll get some shows, because you always do, that aren't big enough for your new arena, whatever, and you'll put them in there and you'll give them longer stays because you can, because the calendar's open. And I bet that within 2 years, you just totally pull out of it.
Right.
And we all know it. And that's where his credibility's in trouble here with all of this. And it is I love DC. Why is everybody so mad at me? Well, we see right through it.
Right. Exactly.
I understand why you're doing it, but we're seeing through the motivations. So can't you look in the mirror and realize, all right, how can we do this to make everybody happy and make us happy too? And which always goes back to the the underlying thing with everybody. How rich do you have to be?
That's right. Right. Exactly. Because that's what we've also said
How
too.
rich do you have to be?
Right. You can withstand.
If you're not selling these teams, they're a family legacy for you. Why do you care if you have $3 billion or $3.5 billion?
That's right. Right.
At what point is there a difference anymore?
That's what I've been.
And he's probably like, if you get to $3 billion, you'll understand one day, Bram, but you won't, because you never will.
The other part of all of it is the same thing. He's moving to so with Abe, he put the arena in a, lack of a better term, bad part of town, knowing it would lift the area up.
Yes.
He's putting a new arena in a place that's already unaffordable for those types of businesses to even pick up and go to. That's what I'm getting at here. There's no assurances that this lifts up anybody that needs to be lifted up is what I'm getting at. That's where I think the overall arching everything is.
That's why people are mad at him.
Correct. And as they should be, because there's not any assurances of, hey, Clyde's and that ramen shop and wherever else. You want to come with us? We'll help you come to the new arena.
That's right.
If there was a little bit of that, literally an ounce of that, they could hang their hat on it, but there's none of it. That's the problem. This is how great my empire is going to be, and it's kind of like, and
that's good for everybody, because I'm the best.
Go ask Dan Snyder how that's going. He's $6 billion richer, and he gave his house away.
Yeah, that's right. Did you see the thing about his Potomac house?
Yeah. I talked about it yesterday. He's so rich, he let his $50 million mansion go.
For what? I can't remember for what. What was it?
It started out as $49 million. They dropped it to 35, and then they just decided to donate it to American Cancer Association.
That's a good write-off for them.
Well, yeah, and he's got quite the write-off that's about to happen for him. So I'm just saying, though, even Dan and leaving
he does
the
need
area,
a write-off. He's like, his accountant's like, that's not a bad idea. His accountant probably wrote him and said, have you sold that house yet? And he's like, no. And he's like, I got an idea for you.
Do you know what it gets appraised at? He gets dollar for dollar back.
Whatever it gets appraised for?
So granted, it's probably not $50 million, but I bet you it's quite a chunk of change.
I'm not going to sit here. I mean, I know why he did it, but I'm not going to complain about it.
Right.
If it's a donation to them, it's a donation to them.
Correct. Exactly.
Even if it does benefit them.
No, of course.
Where is he, on the yacht?
Yeah, duh.
That's a great email.
Don't they have a castle? Don't you just assume they bought a castle in the UK somewhere?
Where is that at? Ooh, I wonder.
Camp Dan.
I wonder what they're up. Camp Dan would be amazing. I wonder if I'll ever get an invite to that.
Maybe.
Reunion. I might have a reunion at Camp Dan one day. Who knows?
Maybe. When you called games for 30 years, maybe?
Maybe. Who knows? All right, we'll be right back. Bram Bush Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.